Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to another episode of the Space Stories Read Aloud series. I hope you're having a wonderful Friday today, and I also hope that you've had the chance to get outside sometime this week because it's been so warm, whether it's been going on a walk or playing out with friends, just getting that sunshine and enjoying the nice weather. So, for today's book, when I picked it, I made a slight error. The book that I picked is Space Race by Sylvia Waugh, and I believe that's how you say her last name. I'm sorry if I got it wrong. When I picked it out, I thought it was a shorter book, similar to books that we've read in the past, but it's a chapter book and it's much bigger than other books that we've read. I checked the page count and it is 241 pages long, which is a lot to cover in one video. So what I think we're going to do is I'm just going to read the first 1 to 2 chapters, which is only 10 pages, so it won't be too bad. I'm debating whether or not I'm going to make a mini-series where I read each of these chapters, or if I'm just going to leave it with this video only. And if you want to look more into it, or if you're interested in it, you can just find it at your library and finish reading it for yourself. If I do end up doing the mini-series, I will let you know in the next video probably. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. Chapter 1, The Fight. The village of Belthorpe lay sleeping like the little town of Bethlehem under the dark December sky. In the streets, not a soul was stirring. The ensign creaked as it swayed in a light breeze. A solitary cat stepped delicately along the stone wall in front of the Maryville cottages. There were no watchers in the night, unless the twinkling stars were all gazing down on this little bit of England. Then, suddenly, the peace was shattered. A fire engine sped into the village from the south, hurtled along the main street, and shot out up the hillside to the north. Its siren, hee-hawing through the silent night, woke up most of the villagers, and some of them were none too pleased. 3 o'clock in the ruddy morning, growled Sam Swanson, the newsagent, thinking of his own early start. What time to be making all that racket? Who do they think's gonna get in their way? I have a mind to report them. I'm sure it's against the rules. If it's not, it well should be. His sons, Philip and Anthony, were hanging out at their bedroom window in the flat above the shop, eager to see whatever could be seen. Their mother came in and chased them back to bed after slamming down the window to shut out the freezing cold. Philip yawned and grumbled, I bet Donnie's up watching. I bet his mam isn't sending him back to bed. Well, your mam is, said Mrs. Swanson. I don't want to hear another sound from this room. Thomas Derwent must have been the only child in the village who slept through it all, though the engine passed right in front of his house, just below his window. Thomas had a time for sleeping and a time for waking, and nothing ever stood in the way of that routine. He had never been taught to wake up in the middle of the night. It had not been part of his training. By day he must observe, by night he was to sleep, as children do. Next day all of the village children, except Thomas, were tired at breakfast, but not too tired to perk up and gossip on their way to school. The fire of the night before was their only topic. Jackson's barn, the oldest for miles around, with the roof that had lasted 300 years and housed many generations of owls and owlets, had gone up in flames. I saw it all, said Donald just as triumphantly. I put me coat on over me pajamas and made me dad take me up to see it on his motorbike. He didn't want to go at first, but I can talk him into anything. And it was better than bonfire night. There was flames and smoke everywhere. And we saw 2 owls flying out through the smoke. Philip Swanson looked at his friend sourly. You'll be saying next that you're glad it happened. You'll be saying next you've done it. But Donnie wasn't prepared to go as far as that. Young as he was, he had a sense to realize that what had happened was awful. His freckled face reddened to the roots of his pale ginger hair. Don't you dare say I'd do anything like that, Phil Swanson, he said. Just don't you dare. He glared at Philip and raised a threatening fist. Yeah, said Philip, yeah, while he thought of something nastier to say. By the time they reached the school gates, the quarrel was ready to turn to fisticuffs. They stood in the gateway facing each other. A crowd quickly gathered round. Thomas Derwent watched them all and wondered how it had started and what would happen next. He still didn't know what Donnie was supposed to have done. It was important to find out. Then he heard a shocked little girl on the outside of the crowd saying to her friend, "Donnie done the bonfire last night." "If you didn't do it, Donnie," said Philip, poking a finger into his friend's shoulder, "then I bet it was your dad. It was sparks from that old motorbike of his." "Right," roared Donnie. "That's done it. You'll get what you're asking for." He lunged toward Philip, fists clenched and flying. But the fight got no further than that. Beside the gate was an iron manhole, settled unevenly in the ground. It had always been there, but Donnie, in his temper, forgot to notice it. One toe stepped against the rim. The boy lost his balance and went crashing forward, stretching out his hands to save himself. He fell full length. His nose started to bleed and his palms filled with grit. Then he began to cry, loudly and savagely with pain and anger. At that moment, Miss Kershaw came around the corner riding her bicycle. She heard the cries, stopped with a sigh, and thought ruefully, "Thus beginneth another bright day." "Come along, Donnie," she said after she got the boy to his feet and checked his injuries. "You're not dead yet, not by a long chalk. We'll soon get you put to rights." She turned to the group standing there, selected Nigel, a trustworthy boy from the top class, and said, "Here, Nigel, take my bike round to the shed and padlock it. And you, Philip, had better come with Donnie and me. He'll be happier if you're with them." The teacher led them both away to the main entrance, sacred to teachers and special dispensations. The other children dispersed by twos and threes. Girls toward one side door, boys to the other. Only Thomas Derwent lingered by the gate. He was waiting for his own best friend to arrive. Thomas was bewildered. What was true and what was lies? How could friends be so nasty to each other? Observing was all very well, but understanding was often too much difficult. 5 years of watching and listening, growing older and wiser, still left areas beyond his grasp. People are so very peculiar. I'll have to ask Mickey, he thought. This is a bit I should really try to understand before I write it down. Chapter 2. At Home at Number 13, Maryvale. "How did the day go?" said Patrick Derwent. He sat back in his armchair, ready to read the evening paper. Outside, it was a crisp and chilly winter's evening. Inside, the fire glowed in the hearth, and all was snug. His son, to whom his question was addressed, was sitting at the table by the window, an exercise book open in front of him, light from the angel-poised lamps shining down onto the page. Thomas was chewing the end of his pen, thinking what he should write next. He looked across at his father impatiently. I'm writing it all down," he said. "It wasn't much different from any other day, only Donald Justice fell down and made his nose bleed. Mrs. Kershaw mopped it up for him and got him to stop crying. And before that there was nearly a fight, and the boys woke up in the middle of the night when they heard the fire engine." "But you," said Patrick very deliberately, "how did the day go for you? You may not realize this, but I have often thought it was unfair to make you see life as one long report. You've been so good about it, even from being a 6-year-old struggling to tell everything in a 6-year-old's words. And all our time here, never a day missed, never a grumble. I'm proud of you." Thomas looked at his father curiously. It seemed such an odd way to talk after all this time. Thomas was 11 years old, and he and his father had lived together, just the two of them, in this comfy cottage for 5 years. To be honest, Thomas could hardly remember the other place. He had been Thomas Derwent for such a long time. The face he saw in the mirror was a familiar one. Straight, fine black hair, small, bright dark eyes, a mouth for smiling, and a chin already firm. In stature, he was slight enough to be bullied, but no one ever bullied him. "I don't mind writing it all down," he said, gesturing with his slim hand toward the book in front of him. "I've always done it, haven't I? Mostly I quite like doing it, though I still don't know what it's for. In a way, I suppose I can guess, but it doesn't seem important enough." Patrick smiled at his son. "You don't need to know," he said, "but do believe me, what you're doing is very important. Think of it as part of an enormous jigsaw, your own special contribution. It is what you're here for. I'm just sorry you had to miss your childhood years in Ormingat. Some day I'll make it up to you." He did not say, "when we go home," but his words kindled in Thomas an uneasy suspicion that that was what he meant. The other place might be home to Patrick, but Belthorpe was the only home that Thomas knew, or wanted to know if it came to that. Now all of that was to change. He knew nothing for sure, but his father's words sounded a warning. His suspicions made it hard to concentrate. The pen on the page struggled to tell the story of the day, that particular day, in every detail, including the playground fight, the mental arithmetic lesson, the mystery spelling test, and the fact that Mickey Trent was off bad, crossed out, no, ill. Patrick turned the pages in the local newspaper regretfully. For him, leaving Belthorpe should have been just another move, but he too had become used to the place and the people settled there, willing to take root. It was something he had been warned about at the very start, but warnings don't confer immunity. Patrick read the details of the Christmas bazaar to be held in the village hall, then the story of a dog lost down a pothole, and he decided, uncomfortably, to put off for another day telling Thomas the news that of their impending departure. It was not quite urgent yet. I see Jackson's barn has burned down, he said after reading a few more paragraphs. We'll have a walk up there on Saturday to see the damage. I know about that, said Thomas eagerly. Phil Swanson said at school today that Donald Justice done it. They were fighting, and that's when Donnie fell and bled his nose. Did it, said Patrick automatically, and made his nose bleed. Then it came to him that such lessons were pointless. Soon he and Thomas would not need to speak any sort of English at all. He was weary, and his weariness showed in his face, making him look younger and more vulnerable. Write it down anyway, he said. It is all part of the account. Thomas eyed his father quizzically. At that moment, he felt suddenly afraid, as if his father knew something and was not telling. But no more was said. At bedtime, Patrick came to tuck him in and put out the light. Nalitan Tanathin Van, he said, gently stroking the dark hair back from the boy's forehead. Nalitan Vatilin Meshed, said Thomas, using the one phrase he remembered from the old language of the other place. It will all come back to him, thought Vatilin, as he closed the bedroom door. There was much that, of necessity, Tanathin had forgotten. But what is forgotten can soon be recalled. Till then, they would be Patrick and Thomas, ordinary, unnoticeable inhabitants of Earth. So that was the first 2 chapters of Space Race by Sylvia Waugh. Again, I don't know if I'm going to continue reading the chapters from this and make a separate mini-series or not. I'll let you know in the next video. I'll make my decision by then probably. Yeah, I really hope that you enjoyed those 2 chapters. I thought it was really interesting. I guess that's really it for this week's video. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.